So, when you hear people talk about the South Florida real estate market, you're probably not getting the full picture. The latest data is telling us it's not one single market at all, but three very different ones. And we're about to break down exactly what's happening in each. And this quote right here, it absolutely nails it. The whole idea of one single market just falls apart when you look at the numbers. Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach are each telling their own unique story. And believe me, the data we're about to dig into makes that clearer than it's ever been. All right, let's kick things off in Miami-Dade. This is our first story, and it's a big one. A key market indicator which had been moving in one direction for 30 straight months just did a complete 180. This is a huge development. Okay, first, just look at the jump here. In January, sales growth was, positive, but just barely. Then, bam! In February, it rockets up to almost 10%. Now, this is the sixth month in a row of rising sales. But honestly, this is just the warm-up act for the real headline. And here it is, the plot twist. For 2.5 years, the story in Miami was the same old song. Condo inventory is rising. It was still going up in January. Then, out of nowhere, in February, it dropped. For the first time since the middle of 2023. This is, without a doubt, probably the most important number in this entire report. It's a signal that the whole dynamic of the market might be shifting. So the bottom line for Miami-Dade is this. You've got the solid sales growth, which is great, but now it's capped off by a potential peak in condo inventory. The single-family market seems pretty balanced, but this major shift in the huge condo sector, that's the real story. It looks like Miami-Dade is finally finding its footing. Okay, moving on to our second story, Broward. Here, things are a little more subtle. The headline sales numbers look pretty flat, but if you look just under the hood, you can see the market is quietly but definitely tightening.
This is where it gets interesting in Broward. You've got this tension, right? On one hand, total sales are basically flat compared to last year. But at the exact same time, the number of homes actually available for sale is dropping, and dropping fast. I mean, that's just classic economics. Demand stays steady while supply shrinks. That almost always points to upward pressure on prices down the road.
I mean, think about that. A 7.5% drop in the number of homes for sale in just 1 year? That's a big deal. The sales numbers might not seem that exciting, but this inventory number, it's a loud and clear signal that the Broward market is really getting squeezed. And that brings us to our third and final story, Palm Beach County. So if Miami is turning a corner and Broward is tightening up, well, Palm Beach is the market that's just flooring it and pulling way, way ahead of the pack. The amount of pure capital flowing into Palm Beach is just staggering. We are talking about a 20% jump in total dollar volume from last year. And when you look at just single-family homes, that surge is even bigger, almost 24%. That tells you there's immense confidence and a ton of activity at the high end of the market. And check out how fast this is happening. In January, inventory was already dropping at a pretty healthy 3.2%. Okay, pretty good. But then, just 1 month later, that decline more than tripled to over 10%. The market isn't just tightening. It feels like it's hitting the gas hard. And this is the results of all that. At 4.9 months of supply, the single-family market in Palm Beach is now deep into seller's market territory. Anything under 6 months really gives sellers the upper hand. This means we're going to see more competition between buyers fighting for fewer and fewer homes. Okay, this table really just puts it all together perfectly. Just let your eyes scan across the rows. For sales, Miami and Palm Beach are looking strong, while Broward is just flat. For listings, that drop in Broward and especially Palm Beach is dramatic. And for dollar volume, you see a small gain in Miami, a decent one in Broward, and then that absolutely massive surge in Palm Beach. See? 3 different stories, clear as day. So, we've torn through all the data. But let's get to the most important question, right? What does any of this actually mean for you and where you stand? All right, let's make this simple. For all you sellers out there, your leverage in Palm Beach is growing by the day. In Broward, the market is definitely tightening in your favor. And in Miami-Dade, pricing your property accurately is still absolutely critical. Now, for buyers, that window of having lots of choices for Miami condos, it might be starting to close. And in Palm Beach, your options are shrinking fast. And for any investors listening, the data is pointing to 2 very clear signals. Follow the shrinking supply in Broward and follow that huge wave of capital pouring into Palm Beach.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Well, while this February data is really powerful, we all know that 1 month isn't a trend. The key now is to watch and see if these signals actually stick. So, here's what we're going to be monitoring. We've got our eyes on three really critical questions. First, for Miami, was that condo inventory drop just a one-time blip, or is this the start of a real new trend? Second, in Palm Beach, can this incredible acceleration keep going? If supply drops below 4 months, that market is going to get even hotter. And finally, we're watching new listings across the whole state. If fewer people decide to sell, all three of these markets could get even tighter.
So at the end of the day, here is what you absolutely need to remember. South Florida is not one single thing. It is three distinct counties, each telling a very different story. Miami is finding its rhythm. Broward is tightening up under the surface. And Palm Beach, well, Palm Beach is just pulling away from everyone. So the most important question isn't what is the market doing, it's which market are you in?
And we'll leave you with the one question that could really define the next chapter for the region's single biggest housing segment. Was that condo inventory drop in Miami just a brief pause in a much longer story, or was it the start of something completely new? We will definitely be watching the data to find out.